Hi, I'm Mike Ryan. Price and value in turquoise are determined primarily by grade, provenance, and supply and demand. Provenance is the story of the turquoise. And the provenance is going to really determine in large part the identification of the turquoise. Did you buy the turquoise from the miner? Did you buy the turquoise from someone who bought from the miner? Or did you buy from a reputable dealer who bought from either of the previous two? After that, identification is pretty much due to subjective observation. And as we see on the turquoise groups on the social media, boy, subjective observation can really vary. You see these posts, oh, my grandfather had this turquoise, can anybody tell me what it is? And the responses will be all across the board. And as I've mentioned many times, in my opinion, those who are most ready to offer their opinion are often the least dependable in accuracy. And those who I would consider the most reliable to give an opinion based on subjective observation, they oftentimes don't want to give that opinion because they know how difficult it is to identify turquoise. So grade, on the other hand, again, we're totally dependent upon subjective observation. And that, at this point, the only real grading system we have, other than killer and boss and I don't know, all these ideas about what 5%, all these things. But really the only grading system I've seen is the one that I developed, which gives a TG, a turquoise grade, based on the R2 rules of turquoise grading. And you can read about that on the blog at turquoiseinamerica.com. We do have some indications of an opportunity to have scientific testing to identify both mine identification and grade. And this is through X-ray fluorescence. And you can learn about that in our video on turquoise identification and also in the report that was published. And that's available in the digital book section of our store. So I encourage you to read about that because it really offers a lot of real promise to develop a scientific means for turquoise identification and grade in addition to subjective observation. So today we're going to look at some different grades from the same mine, and that is Thunder Mountain. Now, not so long ago, we had another post on Thunder Mountain and Grasshopper. I encourage you to look at that. And a couple of years ago, we had another post on Thunder Mountain. So do kind of brush up on your Thunder Mountain knowledge by revisiting those videos. But it'll be real interesting here. We're going to look at a large tray of Thunder Mountain, and then I'm going to break those out into some specific grades so you can really get a comparison of different grades from the same mine. So here we're seeing a large tray of Thunder Mountain. And in general, I would say this ranges from very high mid-grade to even gem grade. So we're really looking at higher grade turquoise. It's all natural. It all came from the miner, so we're very comfortable about provenance. So if we look here, we see some things about grade that immediately stand out. These over on this side are all stones that I had previously, and you can see them in the previous videos on Thunder Mountain. Whereas these are a new group that I got from the miner, from Sri Seville, after I had published that last video. And these are exceptionally high grade. I would say very high grade to gem grade. In most instances, I would think these do grade out as gem grade. and as do some over here, but again, more over here, you're going to see some very high grade. I want to point out how the pricing can really be affected by supply and demand, because let's take, for example, this cab here, which I would say is high grade to very high grade, and it matches very closely to this cab or this cab. And all of these, I think, would be priced at about $50 to $60 a carat based on grade. But when we get into the marketplace, let's say this is about 3 carats to 5 carats. This is a 5 carat stone. This is probably a 30 carat stone. This is probably a 60 carat stone. So if we're saying $50, this is a $3,000 cab. This one is $1,500. This one is $250. Well, obviously, there are many more buyers in the $250 range than there are in the $3,000 range. So a lot of it depends on the supply and demand. Ironically, the larger the cab, the more rare it is. And so you would think that certainly supply is a major factor along with demand. And there's just fewer cabs this size at that grade. So that reduces supply. But that's an interaction of the marketplace. Another factor we have is individual bias and preference. You know, these are all more with a darker web. We certainly see that over on these, probably even a higher grade than those stones we just looked at, but all with a very dark web look. Some buyers may say, well, you know, I really like this look better. I like the brown matrix. And they would be more willing, more inclined to pay more for these stones regardless of grade because of their own preference. Other buyers would say, you know, I really like the polychrome. So they would see this cab here or this one with shades of polychrome and say, I much prefer that. So it is a complex interaction between provenance, grade, supply and demand, and the individual preference of the buyer. Certainly, if your preference is for lower grade, that's to your advantage because you're gonna pay less for what you really want. If you're like me and you really like the higher grade stuff, well, you're gonna pay the price. But you know what? That was true 10 years ago when I was accumulating a lot of this collection, and you know, prices are higher now. So I don't think that's gonna change, and that's why I always advise buyers to buy the highest grade that you're able to afford. In this grouping, we get to see a comparison of different grades from Thunder Mountain. And if we start over here, we're seeing this cab, which I would grade as mid-grade, this cab, which is high mid-grade. Some may even put it into the high-grade category. But using my system, I graded it out as high mid-grade. This is high grade. And by the way, this particular cab is still available in the Calais collection. Then we have this one at very high grade, and then we have gem grade. Now we can see a little bit about pricing. And the pricing is going to jump based a lot on the rarity and certainly what mine it is. So if we had a grouping of Bisbee, which were Bisbee in May month, where we had a listing of Bisbee turquoise by different grades, you'd really see the dramatic geometric increase in grade as we went from mid-grade to gem grade. And a lot of that is just because of the name and because of the real rarity of the turquoise. You know, Thunder Mountain is still producing. We could have a lot more gem grade coming onto the marketplace. That's not the case with Bisbee. So that gets back again to the supply and demand question. But let's say this one, mid-grade, we may see that at about $5 a carat, maybe high mid-grade up to $15. We go up here to the high grade, perhaps somewhere around $40 a carat, to the very high grade, about 60, and then the gem grade, about $80 in terms of value. Now, whether or not you get the price on something of that just depends upon the marketplace and having a willing buyer and seller. But I hope you get an idea here of the different grades from one individual mine.